Hi everyone, welcome to Our Small Footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a family of 8 who live off-grid in Australia. I delved into homemade bacon recently. It was something that I wanted to try. We are looking to get a sow to put over our boar. A sow for our boar to go over. But we haven't got one yet. But when we do, the idea is that we will breed some piglets and we will slaughter them when they are of an age to do so, and we will have our own pork that we need to figure out exactly how we're going to use it and what we're going to do with it and things like that. Had to relocate. It's that time of the day, everyone was invading my kitchen again, so I've moved out into the garden for the moment. So venturing into homemade bacon, because the idea is that we will eventually have our own pigs that we will have to use all the parts of in certain ways to do it. So you can buy full slabs of pork belly from Costco for about $14.99 a kilo. It's already got the rind off, so it's not a bad price considering that even economy bacon is $10 a kilo. So I decided to give it a go. I decided to do it nitrate free. Now I don't believe that the nitrate debate necessarily, that nitrates are the devil that they're purported to be, but they're a preservative and we try not to do too many preservatives. So we did the bacon the normal way. So I've got footage and stuff that I'm sharing as I discuss this, but it was a long-winded process. So we used about a 50-50 ratio of salt, not too fine a grain. So we used the flake salt that I had because that's all I had that was a heavier grain. Salt and sugar, and I used my brown sugar with the molasses in it because I thought that would give it a nice flavour. You can use other seasonings and stuff if you want, but we decided to just do this batch, a really plain, standard bacon flavour, to give it a go. I think I'd like some paprika and maybe some maple. Maybe that would be a nice flavour as well, but this was really nice with just the brown sugar and the salt. So we did a 50-50 mix of brown sugar and salt and rubbed it over all the crevices of the pork belly, into all the gaps, and placed it into a lidded container in the fridge. So for each day post that, I had to pull it out and drain the liquid off and rub a little bit of extra sugar and salt if it needed, like if it still looked like it was weeping a bit, then put it into the little crevices to make sure that the whole surface area had been salted, because what we're looking to do is get all that water out of or fluids out of the meat to dry it out and cure it. So each day I would pull it out of its tub, I would give it a rub over if it needed, add some extra salt and sugar if it needed, flip it over to make sure it was being rotated within the container and what was being exposed was different each day. I did that for 7 days, and then after that we pulled it out of the container, and then I washed it. So I rinsed off as much of the excess salt as possible, and then I patted it dry and placed it on a rack above the container. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to put it in the fridge in a way that it was going to dry out the surface even more. It's called a pellicle. It's called creating a pellicle on the surface of the pork. Now, if you had a cold room or something like that, you could hang it and it would do the same sort of thing. You want it to dry out, create a skin or this pellicle around the surface of it, but we don't have anywhere suitable for that. So inside the fridge was the best bet for us, which is why I'm doing it later in the month, because the fridge is far more empty at this time of the month. So it went in there on the rack for about 24 hours to dry out. And then after the 24 hours, we brought it out and it went into the smoker. So I used some of our red gum here, which is a wood that we've found has a really pleasant taste for our smoking, and I used some chips of that in the bottom of the smoker. I didn't have any store-bought like apple chips or anything like that, but we find the red gum here works perfectly fine, and we have plenty of it, so may as well use what we have. And I smoked it. So I have a Bluetooth digital temperature probe, so I stuck it in the thickest part of the belly and set it up to set me an alarm when it got to 150 Fahrenheit internal temperature. I don't know what that is in Celsius. I can flick my temperature gauge backwards and forwards between Fahrenheit and Celsius, and most of the recipes were in Fahrenheit, so I just did it in Fahrenheit. So once it was internal temperature of 150 Fahrenheit, we pulled it out, stuck it in a tray, put foil over the top of it, and put it back in the fridge to chill. So then the next day, we sliced it and cooked it up. It is well worth the effort. It was definitely worth all the time and effort to do it. It is very, very tasty, good quality. It cooks really quickly. It crisps up really nicely. It's not overly salty, but it's got that molasses brown sugar flavor in it as well, which is really nice. And I could cut it as thin or as thick as I wanted. So we've been eating it for a couple of days, and the guidelines say that it'll last sort of a few days to a week in the fridge. So we've been eating it for a few days, and then today I sliced up what was left. I gave some, or bartered some, with a friend. So I gave a chunk to a friend, and she's going to teach me how to service my vehicle. So that's a tit for tat kind of an arrangement. So I gave her some of my sourdough bagels and the bacon, so that and then she's going to teach me how to service my ute. So I gave some away to her. We've eaten a whole lot of it as well, and then today I sliced up what was left. So the piece that was left had quite a point on it, which was a lot thinner than the other spaces. So what I did was I sliced the thick pieces into nice bacon slices, and I sliced it both grains. So we don't mind it either cross grain or straight grain. It's got a slightly different texture. If you're cutting it with the grain, it breaks into those long strands, which gives it's sort of chewier. It doesn't break off as nicely in your mouth, but it still tastes the same. It's just a slightly different texture. So what I wanted to do was just cut it in the way to use it the best. So I cut it in both ways, the grain both ways, into strips. And then I used some waxed paper that I had, that I used to use to freeze breakfast muffins in when we were eating store-bought breads and things like that. I would buy English muffins, put bacon and egg on them and cheese, whatever we put on them, wrap them in the wax paper and freeze them for easy breakfasts. We don't have freezer space for that anymore, and I don't do that, but I still had part of the catering roll of that left, which has come in handy, because what I've done is I've put the strips of bacon in single layers between those wax paper in a Ziploc bag to go in the freezer, and that way I should be able to just pull out exactly what I want to eat. It's only going to take a couple of minutes to defrost, and then it should be able to cook as we want it, which means that there's going to be less wastage, and we can just pull it out when we want it for specific meals. And then the point that didn't have those nice streaky sort of a look to it, I cut them up into little chunks and put them in a Pyrex bowl in the freezer, and I'm going to use them for the next loaded potato soup, or maybe something like that. I'm going to make a smoked mac and cheese in the next couple of days for myself. Nobody else eats cheese in the house, but every now and again I make a smoked mac and cheese, and I eat some, and then I freeze what's left into portions, and I eat it over the next month or so. And I thought those little lardons, those little chunks of the bacon will probably be really nice if I cook them before I make the cheese sauce and add the pasta to it. So I might use them for that or something like that. But that was the idea of putting them, of that point bit that's a little bit potentially over smoked, because it's a lot thinner than the rest of it, and that funny shape, so it doesn't have the grain the same way. That the chunks would be good to use in that sort of a manner. So we put that in the freezer for using like that. So at the end of the whole process, the thoughts on it was that it was well worth the time and effort. You have to have the fridge space to be able to do it, because it was quite a large piece, and perhaps it might be better to even do more at a time to take advantage of that container and to take advantage of the work required to make it, and then slice it all up and freeze it like I've done. We buy the economy bacon normally, and I normally buy 6 to 10 kilos of economy bacon in a month because we eat it a fair bit. It's a pretty staple lunch, late breakfast thing to have with our bagels or our sourdough English muffins or whatever, slices and eggs and tomatoes and whatever we have. So we eat it a fair bit, and with 8 of us, you can go through, 800 grams, 100 grams each easily in a meal. So we buy a fair bit of that economy bacon, and it's not much cheaper than the bacon that I made, but it is a whole lot more convenient. So I wouldn't be able to replace our entire month's worth of eating bacon with homemade stuff, I don't reckon. It would just end up being too difficult for a start. Initially I'd have to have the pork bellies in the fridge, and then as I created room in the fridge, then I'd have to cure it for making. So maybe I halve the economy bacon that I buy and buy 2 of those pork bellies and then eat it that way. Like anything handmade, like making your own bread and things like that, you tend to eat less of it when you've gone to the effort of making it. You tend to eat it a little bit more sparingly because you're aware of what it took to make it and of the quality of it compared to the ease of just cracking open a plastic bag of economy bacon. I know that seems redundant, but I think subconsciously that's the way it works. When you've got a loaf of bread that you've just bought at the store for 90 cents or $2 or whatever, you tend to eat it at a pace, whereas if you've just made homemade bread, you cut a couple of slices and you tend to be satiated with that. And that's partly why we moved to sourdough, because we tend to eat less breads. I don't know, actually. We might not eat less breads because we didn't buy much bread anyway, but we tend to eat it in a more mindful manner. We are more aware of the way we consume it and of not wasting it. Like, I've got bagels there. So today is Wednesday, I think, and I've got bagels that I baked on Sunday, and I've been having a few hiccups with my dough lately because I'll share a picture of this morning's dough. Ugh, mosquitoes. Of this morning's dough, because the overnight temperatures have been so fluctuating lately. I've been having a bit of problems with judging my dough. So my bagels ended up a little flatter than normal. They just weren't quite as good as normal. And so it means that we've got quite a few that weren't consumed, and I'm going to turn them into breadcrumbs. And they have the everything bagel seasoning on them, so they end up being sourdough breadcrumbs with the everything bagel seasoning, and I use them I'll top my smoked mac and cheese, but I'll also top the kids' tuna mornay bake with it, because they are very tasty compared to standard breadcrumbs, and we don't buy standard breadcrumbs. So if I don't have something to turn into breadcrumbs, I just don't use them. I tend to use them in my meatballs as well. I make French onion meatballs, and I use the sourdough breadcrumbs from the bagels in my meatballs, which is really tasty and adds another flavour. But you're more aware of using it all when you've gone to the effort of making it. So I find that I think that with homemade bacon we would probably consume less over the span of time than we do the economy stuff, because of the fact that you're more aware of how much effort it took to make it and how much there is and things like that. So we'll see, and I'll let you know how that goes in the scheme of things over the next couple of months when we try it out. But I highly recommend giving it a go if you have the space to do it and the time and desire to give it a go. It's definitely well worth it. So let me know if you give it a go, or if you have any tips on how you did it. So I did the normal. I Googled and I YouTubed and I researched and I put everything together how I wanted to do it, or what would suit our situation, our weather, our location, and the resources that I had, and put it together, and it worked for us. Obviously there is many different methods of doing these things, so if you know of anything that would have made the process easier or would be better for us to do, then leave a comment down below and let me know. One day I hope to have a cool room. It would be really nice, and we could then hang it as well. But the smoked flavour was really nice, so I don't know whether I would skip the smoking. I quite like the smoke flavour in it, but a cool room would still be nice at one point. Someone was saying that they got on the comments, I can't remember the lady's name, I'll have to look it up, but they commented that someone got the back of a refrigerated truck and turned that into a cold room. That would be awesome. So if I'll have to put that on my Gumtree searches and see if it comes up saying that someone has one for sale. I highly doubt it, but that would be pretty awesome. So one day. Alrighty, well, hope that it's inspired you to give homemade bacon a go, and I will see you next time.